This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we're talking about the All-Star Game, the Homerun Derby, and the second half of the Yankee season, which has started off with a win. Thank God. Let's hope it keeps on going. Here we go.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. Did she knew her birthday was getting corona?
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Powell Not Found podcast, episode 28. Go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Go find us on Apple Podcasts and help grow the show. We have a pretty good show for you today as we come back from the other side of the All-Star break. It's been a baseball week, even though there's been no baseball played since the Yankees' terrible loss on Sunday, where they just blew a series and a sweep to the Baltimore Orioles with an error by Anthony Volpe, a routine play to shortstop. He bobbled the ball. It allowed the game to continue. It was 1 out away from Clay Holmes securing another very frightening and very dramatic save opportunity. And we say this each week, but Clay Holmes is not Mariano Rivera. And every single week, they even said it on the broadcast, every single week is dramatic, is exciting, and definitely he puts runners on, and it's a scary sight if you're a fan. I feel like we got spoiled for 20 years watching Mariano Rivera. Yes, he blew a save. Yes, he blew one of the most notable blown saves ever in 2001, and one in 1997, which I was too young to really comprehend. But in 2001, I remember what happened to all of my friends in Arizona's delight. But came close, pretty much finished the game. This is not really on Clay Holmes, but he was giving out hits, walks, and left and right, and a ball went to Volpe on Sunday, and he bobbled it. Runner was safe on second. Loaded the bases, and then essentially, an Oriole hits one over Alex Verdugo's head in left field. Alex Verdugo trips, and the Yankees blow what would have been a dramatic game, 6-5. What would have been a dramatic 5-3 win. They give up 3 in the ninth, and they are going into the break with a heartbreaking loss. So for the last, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for the last 4 days, the last thing that you saw as a Yankees fan was a team imploding, a team that looked like they needed 4 days off at the break to kind of get their bearings, get their players back, get their teammates back, get their bullpen back. And they went into the break kind of hobbling into the break. They went into the break as the team that they had been showcasing that they were in June and July, right? And so it wasn't a good feeling to be a Yankees fan. And again, nobody cries for the Yankee fan. Nobody dies on the hill for the Yankee fan. But this team started off hot, and it wasn't great. And we needed something to get ourselves more positive in this week, because there was a heartbreaking loss on Sunday, and then I immediately just said, I can't do baseball anymore. I started watching the Euro Cup, a little bit of England versus Spain, and got some new clothes. Took this opportunity to really try to freshen up. I got an Apple Watch. I did all this stuff to kind of make myself feel like a better person, because baseball was not making me feel great, right? Watching this team not hit was not making me feel mentally the way I wanted to. But then in came the Homerun Derby and the All-Star Game. And in came a national anthem that, again, is hard to talk about, because if everything is true about that story about Ingrid Andress, a country star who was drunk singing the national anthem, then then the whole situation around it is kind of a little sad, right? Obviously, if you have if it is a drinking problem, right? If she did check herself into rehab, that's something that's not to be taken lightly. But the performance of the national anthem that happened at the Homerun Derby, I feel like brought everyone together, especially after a week of horrible things happening in the nation and things. This was the kind of thing that kind of brought America back together with a nice laugh, because ultimately this thing does not matter. And if you didn't see it, she performed apparently drunk at the Homerun Derby. And how this ends up happening is really astonishing to me, because as a person who deals with the production, when you go up and you do something public, and I've sung the national anthem publicly in a different, not in a sports arena that I can recall, but I've done it in graduations and stuff like that. Like, you have so many people that are handling you, right, and shifting you from place to place to place to make sure that you hit your mark, right? And the fact that one producer hasn't said that, I think she's drunk, right, and pulled the plug and got somebody to fill in, was the surprising thing that no one was commenting on in the story. Where were the producers, right? Also, who is this person? I gotta check my mic because my mic seems to be or the wire seems to be cutting out. Who is this person? Who is the person that is singing this anthem? She said she has 4-time Grammy nominees. That shows you how out of touch I am with the music industry, that I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. But anyway, she gets up and she delivers one of the rawest, one of the worst national anthems. And I figured we'd actually kind of diagnose it here a little bit, because I don't think it's as bad as everyone says it was. It's rough, but there's plenty of rougher national anthems. So let's go back here. I found it on YouTube. So we're going to go beat by beat here, just in case you didn't hear it. This was at the Homerun Derby. And the positive thing about this, before anybody jumps on and says, oh, this is a horrible situation, right? Apparently her music has taken off after this. According to the New York Post, her music has taken off. Her follower base has grown. And, again, it's a case of bad publicity is sometimes good publicity in the end, because it gets people talking about the person who wanted to make it big in the music industry. Of course, this is a fall on your face kind of moment, but it ended up working out for her a little bit outside of the whole drinking issue, right? But let's hear a little bit of it, because if you didn't hear it, I think that you might say, oh, this is people blowing this out of proportion, but it is a little bit rough. Let's kind of push to it a little bit here.
With broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
At this point, too, because we haven't heard the beginning of the anthem, because I can't find it online, it doesn't sound actually that bad, right? I think it's this point, and usually if you're singing the national anthem, as I've done before, this is always the bit where it gets hard, right? They say something about the national anthem is that you want your lowest note to be, oh, say, that say is supposed to be the lowest note that you can hit. So by the time you get to rocket's red glare, right, you can hit that note, right? Because it's within register. And if you start from too high of a key and go down, then you're climbing your vocal limitation, right? And so that's kind of where it starts going wrong here, and you can kind of see for yourself. The fireworks don't help. Okay. I think she's still okay at this point, right? Also, shout out to the O's fans in Texas who are still singing "Oh" as the national anthem goes on. But different teams have different things that they shout out at the anthem too, which I didn't realize until I went to a Capitals game, which was that the Rockets red, that red. They sing out red. Like, apparently Texas sings out star, and the O's sing out O. It kind of makes me sad as a Yankees fan that we have nothing. We have just heckling our players.
Oh, say does that star span
There's a star.
but not yet wave o'er the land of the free.
Listen, it's a hard song to sing. I think that's the main point that I want to get out of this. But also the fact that found out later on her Instagram, she posted afterwards that she was drunk singing the national anthem, which is not a good thing. She should definitely get help, and that should be paramount. Also, it's worked out for her. Also, it was the best part of the Homerun Derby. Let's be real, right? The Homerun Derby was already upstaged by that national anthem. Nothing they could have done during the Homerun Derby was as shocking as that anthem, and really was the trend of the night, right? Coming from Twitter. So, if anything, there have been definitely worse national anthems sung before, right? I wonder if they should give her another shot at it potentially later on in the year. That would be, I think, they brought a lot of, by essentially falling on her face a little bit, right? She brought publicity to the Homerun Derby, right? She brought publicity to the MLB. It's not a great singing. We would have forgotten about this national anthem had it been perfect, right? Rarely do we remember great singings of the national anthem. I think Whitney Houston has like a very, very famous one that she sang and everybody kind of remembers. But as a culture, we're going to remember the bad ones before we remember the good ones. And by her kind of doing this, you know, it not only bolstered her career and her recognition, maybe not in a good way, but it definitely got more eyes on the Homerun Derby, and you know, and brought attention to an otherwise kind of bad Homerun Derby, and that I figure is a good way to transition right into the Homerun Derby and how it was. Man, that format is an interesting format. They changed up the Homerun Derby rules. So you had about 30 pitches or so, 45 pitches or whatever it was, for each round. You had to set a number of pitches, and it was timed. It was like about 3 minutes or something like that for each round. And it would get sequentially less pitches and whatever and less time as you advanced, right, to hit as many home runs as possible. And obviously the outs, all the outs that we had only kind of came around in a bonus round, essentially. If you didn't hit a home run, once you were done with a number of pitches, you went to a bonus round. And if you hit a home run over 425 feet, you got an extra opportunity to hit a home run. The format, I thought, was good in terms of bringing pace to it, but they almost sped it up too fast. And this has been a criticism of the pitch clock that has been introduced into baseball. You can hear it sometimes on broadcast, people with timing violations. Garrett Cole last night had a warm-up violation, which I didn't even realize was possible. And the pace of the Homerun Derby, I think, defeated the purpose of having the Derby. I'm all for kind of speeding up the game. I think the game needed to be sped up. The game was too slow. I think I've mentioned this before, but I think the entire Kentucky Derby could be done in between two pitches of old baseball pace. It was just so slow. Even if you go on YouTube now, there's like full games of the World Series that you can watch. And if you just look at the pace, I mean, these games are like 4 hours long. I mean, they're too long. They take up too much of your time. So the pace has been a dramatic improvement. But the Home Run Derby is a game, right? And what was bad about the broadcast in the beginning was that I think the people who were behind the switchboards didn't know or couldn't figure out what to switch to because the pace of the actual at bats and the home runs being hit were too fast to actually convey. And what I mean by that is by the time a batter would hit a home run, by the time the ball would land in the stands, there was already another pitch and another pitch in the air, right? Because the pace was so quick. They actually didn't land on a very good way to convey and how to show the batter until probably about like 15 minutes into the Derby when they started to split screen the batter being thrown the pitch and the home run going out. And part of me kind of thought, man, what a waste, right? Like part of the joy of the Home Run Derby is to see how far those balls can go. I mean, we're watching batting practice, right? Nobody's sitting there going, oh, I wish batting practice was quicker, right? You want to see how majestic these home runs can get, right? Like when I was watching Ken Griffey Jr. and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa hit balls into the stratosphere, I wanted to see the entire arc of it, right? I wanted to see the fans go after the ball, right? Because it was a game, right? And if we're so worried about keeping it into a compact time frame, we should eliminate how many players are involved, maybe? I mean, do we really need 6 players at this point if there's going to be that many home runs hit? And maybe kind of reducing it that way instead of frantically having balls being thrown in a 3-minute time frame to get as many opportunities as possible. God, like by the time the batter was allowed one timeout, which ended up being around like 25 pitches or whatever the halfway point was. And it felt like a timeout for the viewer. I was glad they called it. I was like, oh, Jesus. Like, I can actually rest. I don't have to keep on comprehending what's happening. You know, this sounds like I'm complaining, and I am, right, of the format. I think the format just needs tweaking, right? I think there's something about the timing of it that defeats the purpose of it. They must love it because, you know, they were able to kind of wrap up the Home Run Derby within a set time frame. And everyone talks about that Josh Hamilton 2008 Home Run Derby where he hit like 50 like moonshots at a Yankee Stadium, and it just kept on going and going and going. But everyone talks about it, right? That was the joy of it, was seeing how many can he go, how many can he do, can he hit the back wall, right? Seeing the majesty of the home run, right, is the beauty of the Home Run Derby. If you're going to speed that up and compress it, there's no real reason to do it, in my opinion, right? Which kind of goes back to, like, I thought that the whole Derby itself, I mean, they tried to bring in more how do I put this? More gravitas to the Home Run Derby. I mean, they announced the players coming out almost like a video game style, like with them coming out of this box in the middle of the field, introducing them. The Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy was there for some weird reason, if not just to say let's get ready to rumble for the final. I mean, it kind of turned more wrestling match than Home Run Derby. And I get it. They're trying to change the game. They're trying to make it more entertaining. I think it's always good to try things. But at the end of the day, it's the Home Run Derby. It doesn't need all this spectacle, right? And ultimately, even with all of that, with all of the additions added, it didn't really add that much. I found myself kind of like watching it a little bit. The frantic pace, I think, made me kind of back away from it. And eventually, you know, I was looking at my phone and checking in, and, you know, it's good that Teoscar Hernandez ended up winning. Alex Bohm gave him a good run for his money. The camaraderie between the players are great. It just, you know, it just didn't hit the same. And I think there's the rushed pace of it is like what I got out of it, which was interesting. I also think too that the Home Run Derby, I know that there was a clip of Bob Costa's saying basically that the Homerun Derby, the All-Star game should be changed to, instead of AL versus NL, it should be international versus American-born players, which might actually drive a little bit more viewership. And I couldn't agree more. I think that there's something rather stale about the AL versus NL format, and even going to the Homerun Derby. And that's what I meant to say. If it was international versus American versus in that format, it might kind of spice up the format a little bit. It might get a little bit of nationalism in baseball. And you can't say that there's not nationalism in baseball already. I mean, they sing "God Bless America" in the national anthem before every game, and or "God Bless America" in the middle of every game. If you've ever been to Yankee Stadium, they've been singing it for 23 years, right? And now other parks have kind of followed suit. It just needs something else. It needs like a skills competition. What the NFL did with the Pro Bowl, I think, is potentially something that baseball probably needs to do for these games, or give the center spotlight to some of these festivities that you're having, as opposed to having like the celebrity softball game was in the middle of the last days of the season, right? Was in the middle of games being played. They already started all-star festivities. It's like, move that stuff over, right? You have like 4 events that are happening on that week, which is the Homerun Derby, the celebrity softball game, the all-star game, and then there's the futures game, which, is a showcase, if you will. They have 4 days off. There's no reason why they can't shift the schedule over to have each one have prime viewing opportunity, right? The celebrity softball game probably has the most draw, and it was just scheduled wrong. I just don't understand why they do that. And if they don't want to give that much attention to the games or to those festivities, then either don't have them or do something completely different like the NFL did. The skills competition, while it might have worked, might have not worked for some football fans, at least it's something different. I mean, the Pro Bowl was a joke for years. Nobody played seriously. The game scores were high. At least the All-Star game had some gravitas to it, but they should try to mix up the format. If they're all about breaking conventions here, they have to do something different than the Derby, because the Derby, even with the changed format, just didn't hit the same, or they didn't even let you enjoy it. So if they're not going to do that, why have it? Maybe let's try something else, right? Let's try to glorify something else than the Homerun Derby, than hitting home runs or something like that. Let's try a defense derby. I mean, I'd tune in to see somebody who can aptly play shortstop. Anyways, let's take a quick break. After the break, we're going to talk about the All-Star game, the actual playing of the game, and then we're going to talk about the second half for the New York Yankees, the trade deadline, what's coming up, and then we'll get out of your hair for the week. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Hey, there I am. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the second half of the show. This is the Powell Not Found podcast. As always, we come to you every week around the weekend, and we are trying to build that channel on YouTube. Go to youtube.com /at Powell Not Found. And let me bring back the music. That was fun. And go to Apple Podcasts and go check out the show there and download and rate and review. Rate and review. That's the thing that actually grows the shows. So go ahead and help me out there, and then we'll start talking about things. Obviously, you can send in any kind of email questions to powellnotfound@gmail.com, and we can take your questions there in case you want to have any or discussion topics or whatever you want. So go ahead and use that email to send in questions to the show. And like us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all the social media platforms that you can think of. Threads, Blue Sky, even all the new ones that are coming out for the kids. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about the All-Star Game, right? The All-Star Game came and went, obviously, after the Homerun Derby. They were wearing the putrid uniforms. I actually have one of them on screen here, courtesy of The Athletic here. This is the American League's uniform. I know we talked about this the last time, but they had everybody wearing American League, National League, and we've said this a number of times before. I've heard this from a number of people before. Company Softball League, right? It does not strike the same way. And when you see everybody kind of wearing these uniforms, it just makes everyone homogenous, right? It like makes everyone look the same. There's no novelty to the game whatsoever, right? They've taken all of that out by making them kind of wear this uniform that eventually just goes to selling tickets. Now, if you're listening to the audio version of the show, the National League was wearing a black uniform with kind of a bluish National League over the chest, and the American League was wearing this pink and beige. I mean, it makes a graphic designer go wild, right? Seeing this choice. And clearly they did it for representing Texas and representing, the state and the colors and stuff like that. I'm sure there's some sort of historical connection to these colors that is beyond me because I'm not from Texas. But this is the All-Star Game, right? For a while, the All-Star Game has been all about representing each team equally across the board, right? I was even talking, the All-Star Game apparently didn't do this all the time. They didn't pick somebody from every team, which has got to be the biggest slight ever on a team if you have an all-star team and they're like, yeah, I know you got 40 men on the roster, but none of them are good. That has got to be the biggest diss going into the break if that's the case. So now they represent everybody. So even from a team like the A's that are not exactly representing the American League, you have Mason Miller, right? Who's a fireball or closer, right? That was fun to see, just him mow down hitters, right? From the Pittsburgh Pirates, you're going to have Paul Skeens, right? From the Yankees, you have Judge and Soto. Who else? And Clay Holmes, who weirdly enough did not get into the game. So you're going to get representation from each team, even regardless now, because most of the players barely even go. I mean, if it's not for injury or for rest purposes, for team purposes, there's so many teams that give restrictions on what can happen. That's probably why you didn't see Clay Holmes. It's probably because the Yankees said, we don't want you to pitch him. He can go to the festivities, but he's not pitching. Right? So Clay Holmes essentially got sent to Texas to do a red carpet walk and then back to New York. So I'm sure he had fun, right? One of the things that really stood out outside of the uniforms, because we can trash on the uniforms, I think that's a point that's been well made. They need to bring back the regular uniforms. That's the only reason people would watch it. And it's hard to kind of, when you're zoomed out that much on the camera, it's hard to see your player represented, right? Unless you know where they are. And in my case, I came to the All-Star Game like 4 innings in. So all the matchups that everybody was really rooting for, Paul Skeens versus Aaron Judge, Juan Soto versus Paul Skeens, like I didn't see any of that. I didn't see any of the Yankees play. Then I barely saw them in the dugout because I think that they get permission to leave. So you're not even required to stay for the whole freaking time, right? So what are we watching? We're watching the subs. By the end of the 8th inning, if you guys made it that far, you're watching the subs play baseball. At some point, there were players that were so deep on everyone's lineup playing in the All-Star Game. I thought my phone was going to ring and I was going to get an at bat just because they had run out of players, right? It's kind of taken the novelty out of the game, right? And again, we've touched on this in the last segment, but it's not the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl was a complete joke. And it's not the All-Star Game that counted after the Milwaukee tie in 2002, I want to say, when they made the All-Star Game count after it tied after about 13 innings. And to me, that put way too much importance on the All-Star game and took away the purpose of the All-Star game, which is just to have fun. It's just to watch these players have fun, watch these players kind of be goofy. I miss the goofiness that used to come with the All-Star game, right? There is a clip. Let me see if I can find it while I'm talking about it. There is a clip of, I think it's John Kruk, right? John Kruk and Randy Johnson at the All-Star game. Here, I've got it right here. Here we go. Let me push to this, and let me get it full screen. Whoop, bam, and let me push. Okay, so I miss the goofiness of the All-Star game. There's a couple moments I wanted to highlight, right? This game is supposed to be like the celebrity softball game, right? It's supposed to be for everybody to relax. And that's at least the purpose that I took from it. And when they made it count, the seriousness of the game took over, right? And kind of took the fun out of it. The clip that you're looking at right now, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, is Randy Johnson versus John Kruk. John Kruk playing for the Phillies at the time, and Randy Johnson, God, he must be in the Mariners, right? Or is it the Astros? I can't remember anymore. Anyway, so Randy Johnson is facing, no, it's got to be the Mariners, right? Randy Johnson facing John Kruk. Now, Randy Johnson, big left-hander, over 300 wins, threw the ball like 200 miles per hour, or what it felt like. Tall, lanky, side armor. I mean, he could throw a ball through a building, right? I mean, it was just that fast coming at you. And the rest of the league knew it, right? The rest of the league kind of was didn't like facing him, right? Paul O'Neill has publicly said on the broadcast, and yes, a number of times, that he just hates facing Randy Johnson, right? It wasn't a comfortable at bat, right? In the All-Star game, Randy Johnson throws to John Kruk, and John Kruk is a little bit intimidated. Let's take a look at this clip. Throws right over his head. Hits the backstop. John Kruk takes a long walk.
John Kruk fanning himself off. Johnson has had pitches clocked at as much as 102 miles per hour in Major League play.
Now this ball.
Now Randy Johnson kind of throws way over John Kruk's head, kind of dusting him off the plate.
Obviously just getting away from him, but watch the reaction of John Kruk. Would you say he is?
And John Kruk kind of flinches.
A bit?
When the second half resumes on Thursday.
Look at the next step.
And then he throws a fastball straight down the corner. Now, John Kruk, very, very emotional player, right? He is the player that's accredited to saying, getting heckled by one of the fans in the stands, saying that you shouldn't be chewing tobacco or something like that in the dugout. And he says, you're an athlete. He says, I'm not an athlete. I'm a baseball player. That's John Kruk. John Kruk was also the Nationals radio announcer for a long time, who was just lived. I mean, when the Nationals were terrible, and they've always been pretty bad, but in the beginning, when the Nationals were bad, and they were playing at RFK, John Kruk, I believe, was the announcer that lived and died on everything Nats. I mean, he was the definition of passionate announcer, right?
Blame John one bit on his right leg.
And he just waves and waves at a pitch.
No part of Randy Johnson. None.
Isn't this kind of response?
I don't think so. You knew that was coming. John had no chance.
And Johnson works a 1-2-3 inning.
This kind of stuff, right? It was 1993, according to that clip, right? 1993, that during the All-Star game, no part of it. We're missing that, right? There was also a moment where Barry Bonds picks up Torrey Hunter after Torrey Hunter robs Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds goes deep as... Wow, what a catch by Torrey Hunter. Just climbs the wall.
Is that any good? That'll wake you up. My goodness. Way over the wall to take a home run away from
Barry Bonds. And fans in Minnesota will tell you that's routine for this guy.
All right, Barry Bonds just picks up Torrey Hunter. I mean, that's the kind of joy, right, that we're looking for in the All-Star game, right? We don't get that stuff anymore. I mean, it's too. I believe John Kruk. The reason I was highlighting John Kruk was I think the next at bat he came up with his helmet backwards in the right-hander's batter's box. Right? We don't have that joy anymore in these festivities. It's much too formal, and it's not as goofy and fun anymore. They've made them look all the same. They've made them kind of homogenous. It's just a crew. It's become like it's become an exhibition game that has no character, I guess is my biggest takeaway from the All-Star game. And going back to that Bob Costas idea that he had about maybe it should be American-born players versus international-born players, because it would kind of stoke up something that was clearly present when the World Baseball Classic was going on, right? That was what drew people into the game, was the idea that hey, now you have something to root for. That's not just American League and National League. Bob Costas made this point talking to John Heyman's podcast that the American League and National League don't have any kind of difference anymore, right? So what's the point? Especially if every team plays every team, it's not really, there's no really difference between the leagues at this point, as opposed to just having an imaginary line that divides people into who's versing who in the World Series, right? There's no difference in play. So, yeah, let's try to mix it up next time. Let's try to bring something new to the All-Star game. Let's try to bring other players and make them recognizable to other demographics, right? This is the one opportunity that nationally players that may not get national pull, not be on national broadcasts all the time. This is the exposure that they get to other people to be interested in, right? Like, look at Mason Miller on the A's. Now, how many people listening to this podcast could probably name the team, the full roster of the Oakland A's? Probably not many outside of Oakland and the Bay Area, right? This is that opportunity. And this goes back to the uniform thing, right? If you can identify who someone plays for, you're more likely to kind of go and check that person out and identify like, wow, that guy's really can pitch. The next time the A's are on at MLB.TV or something like that, maybe I'll look for that. That's what the All-Star game is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to give exposure to people who haven't been exposed, right? I don't know if it does that anymore. You know, I'm not quite sure anymore. I'm not sure if it brings up the emotional excitement that the WBC does now. And maybe that's just as an older fan looking at something I've seen many, many, many iterations of now, that I can't translate that excitement anymore in my head. Maybe that's the reason. But it just feels a little bit tired is my criticism. Let's take a quick break again, and we're going to talk about the Yankees' second half needs, along with some Luis Severino comments about the Yankees that really, really do ring true. So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. The Yankees did play last night, and they played well last night. Anthony Volpe kind of made up for that game-losing error with a bases-clearing double, and the Yankees ended up taking the first game from the Rays of their homestand back 6-1 last night, which was actually a really, really nice feeling to get. The Yankees need to get back to those winning ways. But I think that the first half of the season has, man, it's been very, very similar to 2022. And I can't get over the last 3 years. It has been the same problem over and over and over again. It's the hitting, right? It's the looking at pitches down the middle. It's the complaining of clear strikes, right? Trent Grisham took a fastball completely down the middle of the plate at one point, and I was like, you gotta swing at that ball, right? Like, what are you waiting for? You're waiting for a perfect count. The first half has exposed the same problems that I think the Yankees have always had, which is that once you have two hitters like Judge and Soto, you realize that most of the offense is kind of wrapped up in those two hitters, and they need to make a move to round out their offense, right? There are too many wild cards and too many glaring holes in the lineup that hopefully will be filled by some players coming back, but they need to start making moves and start looking towards the future a little bit, right? And what I mean by that is that you have Glaber, who may or may not be on the team in a couple weeks, right? I would be very, very surprised if they didn't move Glaber Torres. I think Glaber has been a great Yankee. I think he's been a great player, but he's been on the trading block rumored a number of times, and with this being his walk year, with him not performing, I think it's not a great opportunity to give a great sales pitch to get a return back, but I think that you need to either fill up that gap at second base so you have some sort of protection behind Judge with someone who can do the job. Now, maybe that's a Matt Chapman, and you can kind of shift him to third and move DJ LeMahieu back to second base where he seems to be most comfortable. But I think that we might be seeing the last couple weeks of Glaber Torres, right? DJ LeMahieu, too much of a hole there. What happened in 2020? Maybe that was just a 60-game sample, and him winning the batting title was kind of misleading. But, I mean, his average has consistently dropped each season, even with the injuries. We haven't gotten back to a steady DJ LeMahieu, and with him batting 188 at the end of your lineup, you know he's a good hitter. You know he has the capability of being a good hitter, but perhaps 3 years is long enough to realize that, maybe it's time to start moving on and maybe utilizing him more as a bench piece and trying to fill in that hole, maybe with a Matt Chapman. There's too many glaring. Ben Rice, right? Susan Waldman said it perfectly on the broadcast, and now if you're looking for it, you can definitely see it. Ben Rice is a great addition, great rookie. He has a promising career ahead of him. Can't hit the curveball, right? And Susan Waldman said it on a radio broadcast that if he proves that he can't hit the curveball, they're just going to keep on serving him curveballs, right? And that's what they're doing. Yesterday's game, to lead off the game, it was just basically curveball, 0-2 count, boom, couldn't hit it. So they need to course correct in some of these places. They have G coming back. They have Giancarlo coming back. But if he's going to remain healthy, right, is the question. You have a 60-game sprint here to the end of the season. They need their players and their bullpen and their batters to come back, be healthy, and stay healthy into October. Then you might see some winning baseball. But until then, it is a two-hitter lineup, as was stated by their former Yankee pitcher, Luis Severino on the Mets, who Aaron Boone, they asked Aaron Boone about these comments after yesterday's game, and I figured it would be kind of fun to actually listen to his response and then listen to how Sevy said it, because in a way, if you don't listen to the clips, you get a different tone, right? It's surprising to hear something like Luis Severino, longtime Yankee, Yankee institution for a long time in the rotation when he wasn't injured, saying something bad about his other team. This is kind of surprising, but this might be New York media just spinning something up, and I think it is. After you hear the clips, I think that you'll kind of agree. Let's play that clip here.
Got us going tonight.
Who else? Randy?
Understanding Volpe had the biggest hit tonight,
Judge and Soto had 6 to 9 hits on a day that Sevy comes out and says you guys only have 2 good hitters. Did you see that? I know he's playing around with teammates, but do you take offense to that at all? I know you like this lineup when it's whole and doing well.
Yeah, we'll see where the dust settles when we're all said and done. I think
It's a good response.
add it all up, and we've taken our lumps at times, but I think we're at the top of the league, probably runs scored. So I saw the way Sevy said it. It was like kind of whatever. Hopefully we can answer them. Got it.
That's a good response, right? I mean, this has got to be tough. As a person who's got to answer to the team every freaking night, right? It's a good response to just saying he was just messing around. Like, he was just talking crap. Like, they clearly must have a good relationship with Luis Severino, even after he's going to the Mets. Like, that they're not going to make this a bigger deal than it already is. Even though what he's saying is kind of true, right? Let's take a look really quickly. Let me pull up the actual Severino quote, and you can kind of determine yourself of whether you think this is a big deal, right? It's not, but it's still kind of funny that he's saying something that's actually categorically true, even though he's messing around. Let me push to Luis Severino. This is the Mets post game from SNY.
Do you have any fun with that after you beat them 2 over at Citi Field? Saying anything to them or anything like that?
No. We have a group chat that we always talk. The guys who've been through the Yankees and stay with the Yankees, and they talk about me when I beat the Yankees. Oh, you're afraid of us? But I say I'm not afraid. You guys right now you only have 2 good hitters. I can walk those 2 guys and beat. But now it's always a friendly competition against the players that you play with. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, hopefully in the future I can face them.
There we go. Anyways, so that's the statement from Luis Severino. Clearly just messing around, but also saying something that should be the mantra going into the trade deadline for Brian Cashman. The Yankees only have 2 hitters, right? We've seen teams do this. We've seen the Red Sox do this. We've seen Tampa kind of try to do this, right? If you get rid of Soto and Judge, who are you dealing with? You're dealing with a collective batting average of about 270, if that, 260, right? That's being generous. There isn't a big threat in the lineup outside of those 2 players. Now, if those 2 players are fresh, right, and if we get somebody back, it may make the paradigm shift a little bit. But he is saying something that's true. The Yankees need to fortify their bullpen. That's sure. Everyone needs to fortify their bullpen, right? Especially bullpen pieces get hurt. Bullpen pieces come and go. But the Yankees need someone who can add dynamism. Is that a word? Dynamism to the lineup. Like Soto did. If Giancarlo comes back and adds that, and he's hot, and because he's a very streaky hitter, you still need somebody else to kind of fortify that lineup, right? You need contact baseball players. You need baseball players that can put the ball in contact. They have an over-reliance now on the lineup of players that hit into double plays, right? That don't think about the situation, that are swinging for the fence, swinging for the heroic thing. Alex Verdugo, where did you go? Right? You were supposed to be this guy. They need somebody else to inject some life into this lineup in the second half. And that's why the next couple, now that the draft is done, and they have a little bit more of an understanding of what they have in their farm system and what they're going to depend on in the future, these next couple weeks, these 11 days, right, will be critical about who's going where. But the next time I talk to you guys, it will be around four days from the deadline. There will be a lot of activity that will be happening. The Yankees need to change up the formula. They need to send a message to the clubhouse that they're willing to actually go in and get somebody to really make a run at it. Right now, they are 1 game behind the O's. Did the O's win last night? I think they did. Let's see. The Red Sox are coming on strong on the standings. Where are the how come they don't give you the standings really quickly? The Yankees are currently sitting 1 game behind the O's, 2 back in the loss column, same win total, right? The Red Sox are 5.5 out. This is not a it's not case closed. It's not a done deal that the Yankees have solidified a playoff spot. They need to show their clubhouse that they're willing to go and get the extra piece that they need. And hopefully that happens in the next couple weeks. Anyways, all in all, and let me conclude with this before we get going here. Fun All-Star break. It was nice having 4 days of baseball that weren't there, right? Like, you get your nights back, you can watch TV shows. It's great, right? We have 2 months left in the season, right? The Yankees have to look at this like the 2020 season. You have a 60-day sprint to basically play your best baseball, become a team again, and then go into October with that mindset. If they keep on playing like June and July, we are not making the playoffs, right? And then there has to be some other conversations because the entire team is going to change next year. There are many, 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 many players that are on walk years, right? This is it. So hopefully the front office takes the message, makes the, does the deals that need to happen, go after the players, because if it's not this year, what year is it? You get me? We'll see you next week. This has been the Powell Not Found podcast.
She's losing track of the days. So she's been
Bye.
dancing to the music blaring from the Renegade. And in the morning she